Thank you all for coming. Good afternoon. My name is Afton Thomas, and I am one of two associate directors here at the Center for the Study of Southern Culture. Today's speaker, Yolande van Heerden, is a fiber artist and art instructor in Greenwood, Mississippi, where she is called home for the past 11 years. Yolande is a native of South Africa and first came to the United States as a high school exchange student in Montana. She celebrates her homeland's cultural diversity through her community outreach work. She draws up the richness of its fabric tradition in her own creations. She teaches a wide range of art classes, including sewing, quilting, and garment fiber art projects, and works as an art teacher for groups of small children, conducting courses in sewing at ArtPlace Mississippi and many others, and has coordinated multiple community-wide quilting projects for organizations, including the Museum of the Mississippi Delta. In an article written by Yolande's dear friend Martha Foose, which I recommend you all read if you haven't, it's a few years old. I enjoyed reading and learning more about Yolande there. Yolande says, sewing is all about storytelling for me. Whether it is picking out fabrics that tell a bit about a place or time that I am using in a quilt, or the cut of a garment being inspired by a fabric's print. It is the same desire to share an experience through textiles. Early on in the pandemic, I was drawn to many friends and colleagues wearing beautiful masks of a variety of colors and patterns. And when I would ask them, where did you get these masks from? They would say, Yolande, my friend Yolande. She has a beautiful spirit and she is talented. Not just one person said that, many people said that. So I am excited to welcome Yolande van Heerden to give our Art in Barnard, Mississippi Voices lecture today and hear how she sparks joy and provides inspiration in her community. Please join me in welcoming Yolande.
Thank you. Okay. All right, so I gotta put this thing on. Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate this. And I'm going to share with you a little bit today what we do down in the Delta. A lot of you are my friends and know how I ended up in Greenwood, Mississippi. But just to refresh your memory, when I was much, much younger, I worked in Los Angeles in a restaurant. And we would go in at 4 a.m. and make pastries and then open the doors at 8 and sell breakfast. And this one particular morning, I was running a little late, so I sliced the tip of my finger on the meat slicer. And when I went to the hospital, that was the morning Martha Foose walked in. And she got my job because I went on workers' comp for a few weeks. So when I came back, there was this girl from Mississippi with this heavy, heavy accent, saying things like pear jam, and I was completely fascinated. Mississippi is a state that's very prominent in South Africa. You know, in South Africa, we think New York, California, Texas, Mississippi. Pretty much that's what we think the United States is. And so when I met her, we became friends. And her mom bought me a ticket out to come and visit in Yazoo City and on Pluto Plantation. And I loved it so much. I kept coming to visit every single year, and finally I could move to Greenwood. So here I am, and it's my absolute happy place. It's so much fun. I put a timer on my phone because I tend to get sidetracked, and I know we're on a time limit. So I have a little business. It's called Tomboy Art, and I make all sorts of fiber stuff, bags, quilts, anything that I can come up with. I like go into my studio and I play around and make these things. So one of the first projects I did when I came to Greenwood, there's an area called Baptist Town. It's a pretty impoverished neighborhood. And my friends of mine rehab houses in Baptisttown, and they had 14 Katrina cottages that sat at our airport for years after the Katrina hurricane, and they managed to buy them and put these rehabbed homes into Baptisttown. And when the big unveiling happened, I said, you know, I'd like to do something to honor this. It was such a great event. So I came up with these little flag banners called, oh goodness, I'm a little sidetracked. I came up with these flag banners called silent wind chimes. And the way I make them is use some plastic that I fuse and old scraps and create these colorful little flag banners and hung them all between these Katrina cottages in this little neighborhood. And they sort of remind me of wind chimes. You know how wind chimes resonate with you after you walk away, you hear the sound. Well, these little colorful flags do the same thing. And I'm sort of inspired by the art of Cristo. I don't know if you know him. He did an installation in California on an area near a freeway called the Cohan Pass with these big yellow umbrellas, just thousands of them, and it was just stunning. I loved it. Anyway, so I did this with Baptisttown, and then I did more work in Baptisttown. My slides are going to be backwards here. I'm sorry. When we got into Baptisttown, the Help was filmed in Greenwood, and they built a community center. And so I was invited to do art with the kids at the community center. And it was a real nice way to introduce myself to the community. And I've spent a lot of time there. This is my friend Nada who helped me. And then here are the little silent wind chimes that were up by the Katrina cottages. And they're just fun. They're just like made out of scrap fabric. They don't last very long. It's the same principle as Tibetan prayer flags. You know, you hang them up, the wind comes, it rains, finally they fall down, throw them away, and get some new ones. They're not made to last. It's just a visual that provides temporary joy. Okay, and so a number of years ago, the Museum of the Mississippi Delta got a beautiful exhibit called The Power of Children. It's an exhibit that was started by the mother of Ryan White, who is the little boy who was HIV positive in the 80s, and his school wouldn't let him come to school because they felt that he was going to give it to the kids. Anyway, so she started this exhibit, and it features 3 children, Ryan, Ruby Bridges, the little girl who had to go to school for a year by herself in New Orleans, and Frank. And so this incredibly powerful exhibit came to Greenwood, and as you know, Greenwood is a town pretty much divided in many, many ways still by socioeconomic situations, schools. It's very apparent. But at the museum, we decided, I was talking to Cheryl Thornhill, who was the director at the time, and said, we've got to do something to connect the community, because here we are with this exhibit in Greenwood where so many incredible events have happened. And so this is, I brought this to show you, this is the quilt we made. I just reached out to the community and asked people to donate old jeans and scraps of fabric. And I went to the museum Tuesdays and Thursdays, took some sewing machines with me, and anybody could come and help sew. And oh yeah, I have some pictures here to show you. And it was wonderful. Parents came, kids came. I had some people who would go to the area of Baptisttown where kids go to a mentor center every Friday, bring a bunch of kids to come and sew. People who would come and see the exhibit and stop and join in. And then after, it took a long time to make this. It's a very big, it's very, very heavy. So the kids first just appliqued by hand little patches on the jeans, and then they connected it on sewing machine, which is always a lot of fun for children. Children love to sew. And after that, I took it home, made a huge top, brought it back with colorful thread. If you look up close, you'll see there's a lot of thick, colorful thread. And we would sit in a circle, and I don't know how to play videos, but I have some fabulous videos where they're just sitting around and talking. They're just chatting. But also, they remarked, how hard it is to quilt through such thick fiber with these, thick threads. But the quilt is hanging on both sides. It's real big and beautiful. And then with this exhibit really was also one to inspire hope. And there are pockets on the left on the jeans. And so when people would go through the exhibit, there was paper and pen, and they could write little notes that they wanted to say for hope for the world and stick the notes in. So you'll find like little notes in the pockets. I've never gone and read them because I just sort of like the idea that you can do that, but I think that's a lovely thing to do. So, and that was a wonderful, if anybody has any questions also while I talk, we don't have to wait till the end, you can just ask. I like this just to be a nice open discussion. Anyway, so this was one community quilt that I did. And then recently, my friend Robin Williams lives in Grenada, and she started a nonprofit there because she saved a swamp. There's this huge patch of land right in the middle of Grenada, I mean, in the middle, where they wanted to chop down all the trees and, I don't know, put in a parking lot or something silly. And so she fought for it and saved it because she's into nature, and she's a watercolor artist, and she in particular loves to paint with natural pigments. She's just a phenomenal person. I've learned a lot from her. So she approached Mississippi Arts Commission for a grant so we could make a community quilt in Grenada, specifically geared towards the swamp, the animals and the plants. And so this is what happened. We started in the beginning of 2020. Gosh, time has gone by so fast. January 2020, I started to do the community quilt in Grenada, and I brought over all my fabrics and all these amazing pictures. I'm not going to pull them out because it's just, we don't have enough space to put it. But, pictures of the fish that are in the swamp, or the wood ducks. And there's 4 quilts here, and each block represents an animal or plant. And these are like interpretive blocks, kind of done on the Geesbend style, very free-flowing. But if you look, I'll show you one, like the hummingbird. So we take all this fabric to the kids. That's to remind me. Like in Grenada Elementary School, we went to a few different schools and showed the pictures to the kids, and then asked them to look at these animals and to see what do they see, what shapes do they see, what color, and then to go find it. I took a bunch of sewing machines and thread, and everybody got together and just made these incredible blocks. Some of the blocks would be really wonky, and that's okay because I took it all back and then did, what you would do if you would see. Okay, so I love this one. The warmouth sunfish. It's a fish who has an eye that's red with black in the middle with red on the sides. It exactly looks like that. And if you look at a picture of this fish, you would absolutely recognize it. And so by doing this, the kids also learned a lot about this swamp, and that's the whole goal. So these, in essence, become teaching tools, like they're nature classrooms, basically. And so the backs of these, people donated khakis. I wanted everything to be found. Nothing was bought. And on the backs, the khakis represent all the different grasses in the swamp. And I embroidered the names of the people who helped and the people who sponsored it. So after I put the quilt tops together, I realized this is way too big for one quilt. I couldn't carry it. So it became 4 quilts, and took these down, and people started to help to quilt them. And I have pictures, I forgot. And then COVID showed up. So here's some pictures of the kids working out quilts. And then when COVID hit, we had to stop, and I had to finish these quilts, but I didn't have all the blocks done. And for instance, the water Tupelo. And so I called Robin and I asked her, what is the water Tupelo? I don't know. She said it's a tree, and but I asked her, I went out to the swamp and I said, well, can you show me the Tupelos and tell me what makes them special? And it was interesting just to go travel with her in the swamp and listen to her. The water Tupelo, for instance, the way she described it to me is she said, they're not red, they're blue, they're gray, and the water Tupelos like to grow together, and they almost dance like ballerinas, where the cypress are like girls with hoop skirts, and they're red. And so it's very interesting to see nature with different eyes. And then, everybody, I had to finish these quilts. The pandemic hit, and it was, the end of that community quilting section. But it was an incredible experience. And I hope you all come and have a look at them up close. Yes?
Where are the quilts now, Yolande?
The quilts live in Grenada with the Friends of the Shakshuama Swamp. That's the swamp that they saved. It's also called the Leetart Preserve, Nature Preserve. It's a very cool place. You can go any time of the day and go and visit it. There's a walk. They've done walks in it. It's beautiful. You can go kayak there. And it's 2 minutes walk from the coffee shop in Grenada. So it's a really nice place. Anyway, and so these are just 2 of the community quilt projects. I've done some other ones, but I thought these are real prominent, and I feel very proud to share them. It's brought a lot of people together, the work in these quilts. Hundreds of people worked on all of them. And so when I got to Greenwood, I saw this arts organization, and back then it was called Communities in Schools, where we would go out to schools and work in schools as artists. And the government sequester happened in, I think it was 2013 maybe, somewhere around there, and we lost all funding. So ArtPlace lost all funding and had to change their whole philosophy. And what happened was we changed names, we changed our philosophy, and we brought art inside instead of us going out and just raise money. And that's when I asked ArtPlace, can I start a sewing program? Because I think sewing is a real enjoyable thing, and it brings people together. And so a friend of mine said, what do you need to start? And I said, I need some sewing machines. So I got 4 sewing machines from my friend and started the ArtPlace sewing program. And we were very small in the beginning, and people in the community had old sewing machines laying around, and they would just come and drop them off, and some of them worked, some didn't, but it was great. So this was back in the very first sewing program I started. Again, Mississippi Arts Commission gave us money to start this entrepreneurship program. We didn't really know what we were doing. We were all just feeling it out. But it was great because you know what? The kids don't care. They just want to have fun. They just want to learn something new and spend time together. And so this was our entrepreneurship program, and we made a bunch of stuff, and they could sell their wares and keep the money, which they loved. And this was with a annual barbecue festival that we have in Greenwood. Back then it was called River to the Rails. Now it's called Q on the Yazoo. These kids are all in university now, by the way, or out of school. So that's how it started. That was a long time ago. I kind of feel like it was yesterday, but it wasn't. It's a long time ago. That's me and Erin, really proud. This is Charity. She was 12, and Charity now is 18. Little pin cushions that they made. And Charity, you know, one day she said to me, what do we have to do, you know, for ArtPlace? I said, well, you know, we've got to keep raising money. And then Charity came, her and her friends talked, and they said, we have a really good idea. We're going to have a bake sale so we can raise money. And I just love her. I think one day she's going to probably be president of the board. So my program has expanded. That was quite a long time ago, and I've learned a lot. Mostly, I know that all the kids want to do is just sew. They don't really care what. They want to sew, and they want to show off. So in the fall, I started this quilt program. And every year when we do it, we just kind of try something new. You know, I've never been a good sewer. I just fiddle around and see where it takes me. And the same for the kids. This is Devin, and Devin started to sew with me 2 years ago, and he absolutely begged to make a quilt. He came a little late, but we made it. I allowed him to do this little quilt, and you can tell he's extremely proud of himself. In making these quilts like this, quilt is a strip quilt, but it's called a jelly roll quilt. And the kids also love all these names, and I like to use a lot of African fabrics, primarily because I can buy it cheap. American fabrics are really expensive. But it's also, I love the colors, and I like to teach them about it. It's very forgiving when you sew with it because the front and the back looks the same, so it's easy. And we have this last year we had a quilt show. The first year when we did all the quilts, we had a quilt float. But to pull all of that together is kind of hard. There'll be a picture of the quilt float in a minute. But you can just tell from Abby's face that she's extremely proud. And here's how cool these kids are. I thought they would walk and just show their quilts, but instead they draped them over themselves. And I gave them all sunglasses just for fun, and we had a fabulous fashion show. And you know, they just loved it. Yeah, they're just so much fun. This past January, we had a quilt show at Turnrow Books. And all the parents are invited to come and take part. And this year I decided to take photos of the kids and the parents with their quilts. This is Taylor and her dad, and she's just a little shining star, so happy. This is Abby. She made the biggest quilt. And I asked all the kids when they do these quilts to write a little, just a little blurb about their quilt. They can say anything. They can tell me why they picked the colors or what it reminds them of or whatever they feel like. So Abby's quilt, you know, I didn't kind of get it. She made this big quilt. She had 3 butterflies, and it was kind of simple. And so, but when I read her artist statement, it brought tears to my eyes because she wrote that she has 3 butterflies for her 3 sisters. One is for Maggie, one is for Lydia, and one is for her sister Naomi, who died 2 months before she was born. And then she wrote that on the blue, the colored dots here, the red dots are for her grandmother who passed away the year before, and this is dots for this one. And I thought, how thoughtful and how deep and just incredibly beautiful. And so it changed the way I looked at her quilt by understanding why she picked everything she picked. This is Kaylee, who's been with me a number of times. And I actually brought Kaylee's quilt because she made a mistake on it, and she's going to hate me for showing it off, but it's okay. You won't tell. So Kaylee, this is Kaylee's quilt. These are her letters that she's going to fix. So I learned something else. This quilt is her favorite K-pop band, BTS. And with these quilts, the level 2 kids, they could do whatever they want. They could express however they want. So basically, these are time capsules of who they are at this age. And the kids, she's 12. And I just learned a lot about BTS. BTS has a song called Butter. That's the logo for it. She wrote this wrong. It's supposed to say Army. But the people who love BTS, the fans, are called the Army. And this is like a logo. You know, it's how cute is that, right? I just love it. So, and Kaylee is just a joy. I love her. So in a workshop with me a number of years ago, and you'll see more of her workshops. She was in a couple of slides on. But right now, Kaven is 17, and her sister's daughter, Journey, who came to my workshop, this last workshop, was 6 when she started. Journey is 7 now, and that's Journey. She's the youngest member, and this little quilt above her with a blue crown, that's her quilt that she made. And she's a ball of fire and so sweet. And I didn't know she was 6 when she started because I required them to be 8. Somehow she got signed up. And I asked them, they have to be able to read a little because they have to follow some instructions when you sew. But I didn't know why Journey couldn't read it all, so she memorized it. But suddenly one day she came and she said, "It's my 7th birthday." And I was like, okay, here we are. But I love her. She's just a delight. It's a lot of fun working with these kids. Okay, so here's our quilt float. It was just beautiful. There was my dog, Mimi. Mimi was always a part of the sewing workshops. And before we move on, I wanted to show you one of my little kids' quilts because I'm so proud of them. This is Maddie. She's 7 or 8, really young, very just gorgeous, works so hard. Most of all, they like to get there. They like to learn quickly how to work a sewing machine, and then they like to sit and talk like little old ladies while they sew. It's very cute. There's one thing I was going to say. I forgot now. Oh, well, I'll remember. Anyway, all right, so the other thing I just want to mention about Greenwood. Greenwood being quite a segregated town. It's a typical Delta town with the private school academy and then the public schools. And public schools mostly have African American kids. And the private school mostly have white kids. And my sewing workshops have, right now I have kids from 10 different schools, which I think is remarkable. I have kids from the private schools, all the public schools. I have homeschooled kids. And it's the one place where I don't know any other place in the Delta, and I've asked and I've looked around. There's no other place where there's such a big representation of so many different schools and demographics in one location. And these kids come back time and time again. They're really good friends. They share their phone numbers, and they're cute. They're adorable. The boy you saw with a quilt, I have 2 boys in my class. Both boys have been with me now. Devin, 2 years, and Jeremiah, 3 years. So Devin is very popular. All the girls like him. And he likes the girls too. So this last semester, Devin missed the first session, and Abby and Lydia were very excited and kept asking, will Devin be there? Will Devin be there? And so on the second day, Devin was there first, and Abby and Lydia came running and said, is Devin there? Is Devin there? Yes, yes, Devin is there. And Abby ran in, and Devin sat there, and he turned around, and he said, hello, Abigail. And they're just so cute. So I don't know. They're real good friends. Who knows? So in the fall, I do quilting because I kind of like that idea. It's cold, you need something warm. And in the springtime, we have Project Runway, Greenwood. And I really hope the people in Hollywood don't hear that because they might sue us for the name. But I don't care. I mean, we just have fun. What are they going to do? How much are they going to get? We have no money in the Delta. So Project Runway Greenwood started after the entrepreneurship program. I wanted to make up something else to sew. And I thought, well, I asked the kids, what do you want to do? They were like, we want to make a dress. We want to make this. So decided to do clothes, do an outfit. So the first year we did it, I had 9 students. And that was fun, and we had a little fashion show. It was darling. The second year, I had 18 students, and it was just a huge success, and they were so proud. We had a fashion show at ArtPlace, and all the parents came. I mean, it was great. We had the fire department there, the police department, because they all had kids in the show. And then the third year, Sarah Iwanski, who no longer is the director there, gave me carte blanche. She said, I just want classes. So I went to all the schools, and I campaigned, and I had 86 or something applicants. So I went to Sarah, and I said, look, I don't want to turn anybody away. Okay, let's find the money. So we had 6 different workshops, which was completely insane. I will never do that again. Each workshop had a name. Like Mondays was Gucci, Tuesday I had Prada, Wednesday I had 2 classes. One was Versace, one was something else. Dior, I have a Dior, yes, we had Dior. And we had Chanel, the babies from St. Francis, they were Chanel. I thought it was so cute. But first we spelled it wrong. We spelled it channel. We had to like redo. But the kids, they made their big logos on huge papers like this, and they did every step of the way. In the end, we had a huge fashion show, and about 76 kids walked the runway, and it was, I have some photos of it. This was the big, big fashion show, and you can see in the windows, we had these lovely banners that hung and showed the names of the different fashion houses. And I learned a lot too. You know, not all kids are the same size. And in the Delta, kids can be really big because for many different reasons, right? So you can have a 14-year-old that's size 22. And I don't really make clothes. You know, I pretend and I fiddle around, but suddenly I tried to order these patterns and I realized, wait, this is not going to work out. So you'll see, so I've learned a lot because like box pleat skirts, there's so much you can make, and you just take measurements and everybody will be happy and everybody will be proud and look good and look like queens. And so that's what we did. We had some kids had patterns, and then other kids could choose. They could make a box pleat skirt and it still worked fabulous and it looked gorgeous. Like you see the girl with the yellow skirt, that's a box pleat skirt. Miracle. Also, every year with a fashion show, I like to award a sewing machine to one of the students that stands out. And this year, the sewing machine went to Kira. Kira enrolled in Delta State, which was great because my whole goal with these kids is to get them to university at least for 1 year, just to get out of Greenwood, just to go and learn something else. And Kira, the day she went to, when I asked her, I'm like, what are you going to do next year? And she said, oh, I'm going to go to Delta State. And I was so surprised because I had taken the kids on a field trip to Delta State. And I try to do that as often as I can. When the pandemic hit, of course, we couldn't do anything like that. But now that the university is back open, hopefully this year I'll be able to take the kids again, because I think it's never too early to show them the potential that's out there. But yes, so Kira got a sewing machine. She ended up going to Delta State, and she's doing fabulous. Scott, that's Gregory's daughter.
Oh, okay.
All right, and then the last thing I'm going to talk about what happens in Greenwood. So when the pandemic hit, ArtPlace was shut down. We had all these classes, all these programs, and we had to, I was actually in the middle of a quilting workshop with adults, and after this first or second session, we had to tell everyone, I'm sorry, because remember back then, you didn't know what to think. The knowledge was so limited about what this is. We couldn't hug people, and we were told just to stay at home. It was quite an unusual time. So I was holed up in my studio making a gazillion masks, and it was very strange to be so disconnected suddenly after having such a vibrant life with the community. And I thought, like, what can I do to, like, for myself too, just to get that connection again and get the connection with the kids, with each other in some way. How can we see each other? How can we be with each other? And came up with this idea because we have this fabulous big window at ArtPlace, and I often like to make banners to hang up in the window. And so I thought, what's like a fun saying that we can say to make us feel like we are Greenwich Strong? And I was like, oh, that's it. So I started to make these banners just on paper with India ink, and take them. My first banner I called Wade, which is a big tractor place in Greenwood and all over the Delta. His kids come to my art classes, so I asked him, if your kids would paint a banner, will you hang it in your window that says Greenwich Strong? And of course he said yes. And I took a banner over to his kids, to their house, and it was funny because I could get to the house, I call, I'm like, I'm in the car, I'm gonna leave it by your front door, leave it by the front door, step away. You know, we didn't want to breathe each other's breath. And so his kids painted it. It's just with watercolor, like a liquid watercolor, paints very bright and beautiful. And I hung it up in Wade and took a photo and then posted it on Facebook and asked people, do you want a banner? Do your kids want to paint a banner? I'll bring it by with everything. And so that started, and it took off like mad. And I think I kind of lost count of how many banners, and all the banners were different. Every single one was hand-drawn. That's the beauty shop. If it was a clothing store or the Mexican restaurant or a monogram store or the hospital, I mean, everybody got banners. The insurance people, the Canon Motors, that is Fan and Johnny's. That's the liquor store, Lasco's. That's me and Gary at My Little China, the Chinese restaurant with a bowl of noodles. Was that my last one? And so after a while, we decided people said, well, people suddenly started to give me some money when I would pick up the banner. And I thought, okay. So we made little cards that said, donate strong, and asked people, do you want to donate to ArtPlace? And so what happened was people would give $100 every time a business got a banner, not the kids, the businesses. They would like to say, I would like a banner. And they would donate $100, and we raised, I think, probably like $1,400, which was great because it helped us keep our doors open, just keep the lights going, since there was no more money coming in for a very long time. And it was a huge successful campaign. Plus, it really made us, you would drive around Greenwood and you would just see these banners everywhere. There are still some up, some faded. And it was a lovely, a really nice thing to do for people to feel connected with each other. Yeah, so that's kind of it. And then I do my own art in Greenwood, and it's a great little town. I love it. It's sort of like the new Oxford, except it's like the old Oxford. Do you have any questions? Fire away. What's next? Well, ArtPlace is back open, and I do summer camps. So summer camps are intense. We have 2 camps every day for 9-10 weeks straight, and that's a lot of fun. It keeps us all busy. Yeah, there's some, I'm working with Grenada, with Robin Swamp. She's getting another grant. She does a real beautiful festival during Halloween that's connected with nature. There's so many things going on constantly. It's hard for me to keep track. Yes?
How did you learn to sew?
I played around on my mom's machine, and I probably broke it many times. But that's just how I learned. And I took a couple of workshops from Kathy Fussell, and I would just watch what she was doing. I'm like, oh, that's how you get the thread up. Oh, okay. And then I know one more thing. And then just sew and make stuff. The more you do it, after you make 100 of something, it's like a light goes off. It's just like, oh, that's how it works. And then doing the summer camps with kids, I didn't go to school for art really or for much, but I started to read a lot of books about art and follow artists and see what they say. And I didn't realize there's hot colors and cold colors. And so by learning all these things, doing intensive summer camp with kids and studying things myself, suddenly it's like, oh, fabulous. Now you look at color so much different. And so hence all these quilts and the clothes and the placemats. So yeah, that's how I learned, by just trial and error. And not be afraid. You should just, if you're curious about something, I don't care how old you are, and this is what I tell the kids constantly, just do it, go for it, read about it, find out about it, ask questions, and do it. It's fun. The workshop I'm doing with the kids this semester is called, I told them, let's do a DIY. Go back to entrepreneurship, learn about how to price stuff and what will sell. And so I like it. They already have started to give their ideas, so they don't want to call it DIY. They want to call it design it yourself. And they're very specific. And I sort of like that. I like, show them the way and give them the tools and let them figure it out. And that's how I learned. Do you have any other questions? Yes.
So obviously you work a lot as an instructor, as a teacher within the community, but will you tell us a little bit about your own artwork that you do just as an artist on your own?
I do. I love quilting. I have about 5 or 6 quilts that are half done that I have to finish. And some of them are for people. I've sold a few quilts too. I've made some big quilts. I didn't want to bring any of them. I just thought it's a bit much. But yeah, I love to work with recycled stuff. Coming from South Africa, I grew up with the notion of never throw anything away, always reuse and make it new and make it better. So I base a lot of my art on that. It's a little frustrating though, because it can become hoardish. But I also have been making a bunch of memory quilts for some friends who lost kids with their clothes. And it's been an interesting learning curve for me because I've taken a lot of different quilt workshops from people I like. Don't worry about it. It's okay. It's okay. It's got a will of its own. It's like time. It's time. And then I started to make these placemats right after the pandemic kind of eased a little bit. And I was going to go on vacation to LA. And I remember it was right after last year's summer camps. It was August. And I suddenly freaked out. I just thought, I cannot get on the plane. I cannot go with all these people. No, I was having, night sweats. So I decided I'm going to cancel my trip. I'll go later. And I'll just go in my studio and play around. And that is the best thing to do. And I went into my studio, and I was starting to like fiddle around to try and figure out new classes. And I started to come up with these placemats, these Montessori-style placemats, and it just brought back great memories of sitting around the table. And it was funny because it was around 2 a.m. when I decided I'm just going to put these 10 that I made up on Facebook, see if anybody wants to buy them, because what am I going to do with them? And Amos texted me 10 minutes later, and he's like, I want to buy them. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. And then people just like them. And they're like little stories, you know. Recently, a friend of mine wanted some, and her family is from Ghana, on her mom's side, and her dad's side is from Norway. So she asked for some placemats that would interpret that. And then she needed one more in her set of 8. And I happened to have this piece of fabric that I found from my favorite store in Nigeria of the Statue of Liberty. So I made one, and I said, this is it, you know, this is like where the family comes together. And so it's like a story, you know. So I love these cloth conversation pieces that decorate people's tables now. It's kind of like what I'm doing at the moment, that and bags and whatever new idea.
What do you think about having, we have about 10 minutes before class comes in here, having everyone come in, or whoever wants to come in, look at them?
Yeah, please, you look at the quilts and touch them, feel them, flip them, roll them on your back. Thank you very much. I appreciate this so much. And thank you so much, everyone, for coming.